Hi friends, I'm Shauna. Welcome to the channel and welcome to another day of Vlogmas. Today, guys, we need to strap in. Because I have a huge video for you. I'm taking on a very large undertaking, okay? Today, I am going to try to convince you in one video to go on a no-buy next year. If you were considering going on a no-buy, you're on the fence maybe, this video was definitely for you, but also this video is for you if you're like, Shauna, girl, please no. I will not be going on a no-buy. Challenge accepted. So I'm gonna do the absolute most to try and sell you and convince you to try one next year. This is potentially, listen, okay, we're just gonna I have the tea, I have the actual tea. Next year, I would really like to make this a series, a let me convince you series, where I convince you to do something or try something, but that ultimately does not actually ask you to buy anything. You know, they would mostly be lighthearted topics, and some ideas have already kind of been floating by are things like try to convince you to stop decluttering, or to try and convince you of this particular brand is the best brand at the drugstore, or one that I feel like could be fun is let me convince you that Urban Decay should relaunch the Naked palette, or even to try a capsule wardrobe. Or one of my friends also had a great idea, which was to try to convince you to do cold girl makeup using only what you have. I have so many ideas, and I would also, if you're interested in this, I would love to hear from you if there's any videos that you think would be fun. You know, it could be brand specific, you know, the best X on the market, or maybe to try and convince you of something really unpopular, or to try a cream blush if you've never tried one. If you have any topics or suggestions, I would love to hear that from you. So what I would also like to attach to any of these videos is a poll, which we'll have in this video. By the time this video finishes, there will be a poll in my community tab, and I would love for you to vote as to whether I convinced you to try a no-buy or not. There'll probably also be a maybe option. And if we keep doing these videos, then I'll have a tally, like Shauna 1, YouTube 0, or, you know, YouTube 3, Shauna 0, whatever. And I've also found a way to integrate this into low buy bingo. I just think this is going to be a lot of fun and low stakes, because at the end of the day, no matter what I pick, I'm not going to actually try and influence you to buy anything. I'm going to try and influence you to do something that's ultimately good or irrelevant. So please, after you finish this video, go vote. Even if I didn't convince you, I still want you to vote. Okay, we're gonna get into it. I have a handful of things, and if there's a video out there for me to be hyperbolic and passionate, this is it. So the gloves are on, and challenge accepted. Reason number 1, no-buys can fit just about anyone's needs. I went on a no-buy because I had a shopping problem, and this seems to be the most common reason why people go on a no-buy, that or something that is more specifically financially motivated. But that's not the only reason why you could conceivably do a no-buy, and not even theoretically, but why it could actually be a good idea. No-buys can be good for people who are dealing with debt, who feel like they have too much stuff, who want to try minimalism, who want to get to know their stuff better, who want to experience a greater contentment and or happiness, people who want to understand their shopping habits. There is truly no one way to do a no-buy, even if you feel like the internet has told you that that's the case. You can literally do whatever you want. It doesn't even have to be makeup related. You could no-buy hobby supplies. You know, you could no-buy housewares. You could no-buy shoes. You could no-buy skincare. You could do a no-buy for anything. And while we are makeup inclined on this channel, I have a lot of tips and videos on this channel that isn't beauty focused, or they aren't beauty focused, but they're no-buy focused. So whether you're no-buying paint supplies, shoes, cars, or kitchen gadgets, you know, thinking about motivation applies to anybody. And because I feel like the type of person who actually is on YouTube talking about their no-buy, they tend to be in the beauty space. Like, I feel like this is a really beauty aligned or influenced type of video. I think there can be this feeling like there's one kind of way. You have a shopping problem, or you have a debt problem, or both, therefore you go on a no-buy. And I think there's far fewer people who are on a no-buy who don't really have a shopping problem, or who don't really have a debt problem, but really want to get to know their makeup collection or their preferences or their choices, or, you know, finish up products. And so I really feel like there's far fewer people who are talking about how no-buys can be beneficial to learn about yourself and your stuff. And just like, imagine if this was the goal. I don't want to buy makeup or insert thing here, depending on the category, so I can use what I have more, so I can learn about my preferences more, so I can get to know my entire collection of stuff intimately, so I can actually finish up what I have, so I can eliminate backups, so I can appreciate what I have. To me, the appreciating what I have alone, or learning to do that, is such a powerful enough motivator. Like, that alone could be a reason or a goal that you could craft an entire no-buy around, just achieving that one thing. And so if you've been feeling like, oh, a no-buy is not for me because I don't struggle with this, I think that there's so many different reasons why not buying something for a year could be really powerful, and learning to have more gratitude and appreciating what you already have, and learning to appreciate it when things get stale, when things are old news, when things aren't new and shiny anymore, is such an essential life skill, and is such an essential good habit. Learning how to do it really well would just be such a great life enhancement, and one that you could learn really well over the course of the year, especially if that was a sole focus. Number 2, no-buys are not punishments, they are opportunities. I will shout this from the rooftops because I feel so passionately about this. Your no-buy is not your enemy. It's not something to struggle against or to resist or to like grit your teeth and bear it. That embracing it, welcoming it, and seeing it as an opportunity is a way to get the most out of it. And here's the thing. The reason why I'm mentioning this, if you're somebody who's on the fence, I think conceivably, if you like have a shopping problem, if you're somebody who's like, oh, no-buy's not for me, I think the reason is that they're viewed as undesirable. Why would I do this unless it was a last resort? Why would I do this? Because it doesn't seem like it's fun. It doesn't seem like it would be a fun thing to do, or it would be a punishment. Like, why would I do this unless I have to? I'm just gonna like check that for a second. I mean, that was me. Is saving money or learning about yourself or changing your habits or becoming a more appreciative and content person, are those things really bad? Like, really, at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. Are those things really bad? No, they're not. I think most people want those things. Are you the kind of person who just wants the quick fix, or are you the person who's willing to work at it? I mean, I'm gonna call you out. I feel so rude. Okay, we can do this. I'm calling you out. If you truly at the end of the day want to save money, you want to change your habits, you want to change your life, you want to be a more content person, you will not quick fix your way into doing that. You won't. You have to put in the work. The no-buy is an amazing way to put in the work. You already have formulas out there that you can do, that you can follow, and you can just like kickstart it. Like, there's already a blueprint out there that you can follow. And if you're like, Shauna, where can I get this? Videos coming later in December. I got you. Or the reason why I'm calling you out is you got to put in the work. If you want to be a person who wants to change your life and change your habits, you have to put in the work. And unless you are willing to put in the work, you won't do it. So why not kickstart it with a no-buy? What do you have to lose except for bad habits? So what, you make a mistake. No-buys are intended to be learning experiences, and I promise you we'll talk about that. And listen, if you come into a no-buy with an attitude that this sucks, I hate this, I don't want to do this, or I have to do this because, then your no-buy will suck and you are missing a really amazing opportunity in your life. A no-buy is an opportunity to change yourself and to develop better habits that will literally cost you nothing. And I'm sure if you're actually somebody who is in debt or somebody who's really struggling, if you're really bootstrapping it, I get that that might not be fun, but even in those moments, in those situations, there is opportunity for this to be a good thing. Or even in those cases where it feels the hardest or the most unfun because you genuinely have no other choice, even if that's you, it's still an opportunity. And if you're somebody who feels like a no-buy is too extreme, the fact that you can't actually see yourself going a full year without buying stuff, I feel like is a sign that maybe you should go on one. If you see a no-buy as not fun and as something shitty, that will be your experience. And if that is what you've conceived a no-buy as, then your expectations will likely match reality. A lot of the times, how we perceive situations matters the most in how we actually experience things. I just feel like the fact that the no-buy is an opportunity is something that goes completely under the radar, that just doesn't get talked about enough. And I also feel like no-buys often get spoken about as the last resort behavior and not something that can be welcomed for anybody who's not at their depth, who's not at their last resort. I think I personally would have had a completely different experience on my no-buy if I welcomed it. Even if I said, this is a challenge, I welcome you. I welcome the challenge. I welcome changing my life. I want to change my life. I view it as this really amazing, positive opportunity. I think I would have had a different experience. And I'm going to say this for the 50th time. I really try not to be repetitive in my videos, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it here. Your no-buy is not a punishment. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to create the life that you want to live. It's the opportunity for you to be the person that you want to be and make the choices that you ultimately want to make that line up with who you are and what you value on the inside. It's an opportunity to realign those things again. Okay, we're going to move on. Number 3, no-buys force you to reckon with your choices. That was something that was a little scary to me because of number 4, which are coping mechanisms. And I think one often will lead to the other, or can lead to the other. And so interrogating my purchases and my choices and why I've made the choices that I've made can be intimidating. And we're not talking about therapy level interrogating your choices, but I think the reason why some people even avoid therapy altogether is they don't want to face the choices that they've made. They don't want to face their reality, and it's scary and it's hard. We're not talking about something quite so deep yet, but you still have to interrogate your choices, and that can make us feel guilty or bad or shame or some of those negative emotions because we regret the choices that we made, or we would have made different ones, or we wonder how did we spend so much money, or why did that happen? Before my no-buy year, that was me. I rarely, if ever, asked myself why I bought stuff. I rarely ever thought through my purchases or my choices, and I would open my credit card statement and I would say, how did I spend so much money? How? I never had shopping criteria. I never considered things like wears, how often I wanted to wear something, how often, or if I wanted to use things up to completion. I never had any shopping criteria for myself, so I never was able to establish if something was really a good buy or a bad buy. I had, is this a want or a need previously, but then even then, if you're somebody who loves shopping, you can justify your way into anything and you can qualify almost anything into a need. The reason why so many of us even consider no-buys. Oh, that was BeReal. Hold on. The reason why so many of us even think about going on a no-buy in the first place is because we haven't considered our shopping choices, and we say things like, oh, I want to be more considerate about what I bring in. I want to be more thoughtful about my choices, or I want to make smarter shopping decisions. No-buys are the perfect opportunity to start digging into the nitty-gritty. To start thinking about what motivates you to buy things. And not just stuff generally, why do you make a purchase more generally, but how do you buy makeup? What influences you? And how is that different from, let's say, buying homewares or skincare or furniture? We get the opportunity to think about our thought processes and our decision making, and we really get the opportunity to create new ones and develop new habits and new shopping criteria. We can create our own. Like, you can literally create a list and create your own shopping criteria to bring with you whenever you go shopping, or to consider or have with you somewhere, even when you're online shopping. You get to reevaluate and create your own model of how you want to behave in the world. So many of us let shopping drive us. We let credit cards drive us. You know, it's like the credit card has the wheel, and we feel really out of control, or like we can't help ourselves. Maybe not everybody, but if that's you, you do in fact have control. If you're in a car that's actually out of control, the first step isn't to start considering how you got here or why the car is out of control. The first step is to take the damn wheel, you know? The no buy is the taking the wheel. Once you have the wheel, you can then start thinking about, how did we get here? What happened? How do I make sure that, you know, we don't let this happen again? It's really the ultimate platform and the time to start that consideration process. Okay, number 4. No buys force you to stop coping with stuff. This one isn't going to affect everybody the same or equally, but I do think that this one touches most people's lives to some extent. Because I think a lot of people go to stuff in some kind of way. You know, when we have a bad day, we shop. When we feel inadequate, we shop to fix that. When we feel like we're going through the blender emotionally, we go to shop. We can deal with our anxieties and put off dealing with problems by... This was a huge challenge for me personally, and it's one that still affects me to this day. I can say now it is the most under control it has ever been in my life, and it affects me very little now, and I can like feel it and I can see it when it's happening now, and I am able to, you know, not participate in that behavior majority of the time, which is a win in my book. And I feel like for me, it was my worst during my no-buy year because my coping mechanism was gone. And then 2, it took me a long time to realize that it actually was a coping mechanism. Like I didn't understand that that was something that I did. And if I knew going into it, I feel like I could have been much more prepared. And the reason why so many of us shop or go to shopping as a coping mechanism is because of that dopamine hit. We do feel a little good. You know, it is the coping mechanism because we've come to rely on shopping to get that dopamine hit to feel better. I mean, shopping feels good in the best of times, but it feels even better in the worst of times. And so we've created a habit around feel bad, get the dopamine hit, feel better. It's not about what you buy, it's about the act of shopping. So many of us have not created healthy outlets for our emotions, or we haven't learned the skills to deal or cope with our emotions. That's why we go to stuff. I know this doesn't sound lovely right now, but as somebody who has been going through it, learning this skill and changing this habit is truly life-changing. I say it is life-changing because coping mechanisms are just that. They're outlets for our emotions. And they're not actually things that are healthy for us, for the most part, or help us reckon with the situation. They don't help us deal or process things. They help us change our emotional state temporarily, or help us forget about something temporarily, make us feel good temporarily. You know, forget about something temporarily. But they don't actually solve our problems or help us emotionally, help us process. And so being forced to deal with this has made me a more savvy person. I'm dealing with my problems. I'm actually having outlets for my emotions, and I'm dealing with my problems in a healthier way. And so it's made me ultimately a better person because I'm dealing with my ish instead of putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, or shopping. And so even if you're somebody who's like, I'm fairly savvy with stuff, like I don't really go to it as coping mechanisms, I really hope that's true for you, and I'm going to trust that you know yourself. But what I think how this could apply to you if this is not you is that we do it sometimes, like having the bad day as an example. And when you learn what's a coping mechanism and what's not, there's some surface level stuff where it's like every once in a while, if you want to buy yourself a Starbucks at the end of the day because you felt like shit, great. Now you know what your habits are, and you can decide for yourself what's a good spending for you and what's bad. Maybe you're somebody who buys art supplies when you're stressed. That happens. Or maybe you're somebody who watches a lot of beauty YouTube when you're stressed, or let's say booktube when you're stressed. And because of the content that you're watching, you're being more influenced to buy than you ordinarily would. And so then you can consider, well, do I want to watch beauty YouTube when I'm stressed or not? Anyways, I think you get it. Number 5, nobody's teach you how to be bored. Learning how to be bored is actually a great skill that I think a lot of people, especially millennials, Gen Zers, generations that grew up with or have spent almost the entirety of their life with the internet, and also the changing landscape of social media. And I just feel like shorter attention spans, we don't know how to be bored. It's an essential skill that is often learned in childhood when we're constantly just being stimulated and also requiring stimulation in order to like function in the world, like having to pull out your phone while watching TV. I don't think a lot of us know how to deal with boredom or downtime, and also how to deal with a lack of stimulation. If we're commuting, if we're taking a lunch break, if we're, sitting in a break room on lunch or dinner, if we're going out for a walk, if we're, lying in bed or on the couch watching TV. Do you need extra stimulation? But also generally, do you go to shopping for boredom? Or, do you go to shopping because you're bored? Also, if you scroll your favorite stores or social media because you're bored, you need a different hobby. If you do not currently have a tracker on your phone for how much you're using stuff, I was reading a study that says the happiest people use social media for 30 minutes or less a day. Have you ever tried to use social media for 30 minutes or less a day? Anyways, people who are scrolling websites are obviously shopping, but we can get sucked into this kind of behavior and wanting to buy stuff by scrolling TikTok or Instagram, especially if you're in a shoppy, spendy mood. Even the compare and despair that happens on social media can lead us to feeling inadequate about ourselves or our lives, or feeling not good enough, wanting to fix ourselves with stuff. So while that's not necessarily shopping per se, you're not looking to buy stuff, you're in areas of the world, like you're walking into places where there are advertisements. To me, like going on a place like Instagram can sometimes feel like walking into a mall, or I don't know, like reading a magazine maybe. Like sure, that there's going to be ads there and stuff you're going to want to buy, but like if you're not in the mood to combat that, then maybe don't go on it. Nobody's forced their hand on this front, and I think a lot of people underestimate how much boredom affects how they shop and ultimately affects their behavior. Not just what do you do when you're bored, but your attempts to combat boredom. I was personally shocked by this, with how much boredom affected my choices and my constant need to avoid downtime. And when I had downtime, I realized when I was watching shows, I would constantly open up tabs, open up my phone, and look at stuff, or listen to something in the background. It was almost like reflexive to open up a tab to look at something. And then I realized I was doing this because I was like, oh shit, I can't buy anything. So it's like, why are you even opening the tab? I was also shocked to learn how many people out there don't have offline hobbies. No-buys are the perfect opportunity to fight boredom shopping and to cultivate offline hobbies and to realize where you sit on this spectrum. Maybe you have great offline hobbies, and if that's the case, then you can practice them even more on a no-buy year. You can, lead that fulfilling, happy life where you're participating in offline things that just like cultivate your life and bring you joy. And this is your time to do that. We're going to go to this one next. No-buys show you what you're made of. No-buys are predominantly a mental game. I have historically been a mentally weak person. I have lacked tenacity and grit and honestly just mental strength. And it's not because I've lived a life where I haven't required those things. I have lived a life where I have most definitely required those things. And instead of digging deep, instead of, finding that strength, I've often just given up. I guess, yeah, I've just given up, given in. And I think that this for me has been just like maybe tough situations, but also things like academics, or even physical things like running or weightlifting or sports or things like that. Physical activity often requires you to dig deep and to get that grit and to, basically like push yourself. Where is your limit, and pushing yourself past your limit. I've been the kind of person to say my limit's here when really my limit's here. I've given up on myself a lot, and I'm the kind of person who gets to my breaking point really quickly, and not necessarily in terms of people or like being mistreated, but in those other examples that I was mentioning. I've given up really easily, and that's really just not been me. And for me, running has really taught me to be a scrappier, grittier person and to actually dig deep, which is the video for another time. But I wish back in 2020, I saw my no-buy as this opportunity to learn that grit, that tenacity, that willingness to push. I really wish that I had that, or I saw that as an opportunity to cultivate that. In my opinion, mental strength and grit are invaluable life skills because, guys, we all get knocked down. I don't think I need to tell anybody out there that fact. We all get knocked down. It is our mental strength and our grit that determines if we get back up, how we get back up, and our attitude when we do get back up. These are things that we can learn, we can start learning on our no-buy with being mentally strong people. Resisting temptation. How do you act when you have no motivation left? How do you act when your motivation is gone? Do you just give up on yourself every time motivation is gone? Because guess what? If that's you, we're just going to be giving up on ourselves for the rest of our lives. Like, are we really going to be the people who give up on our goals every single time motivation isn't constant or it's gone? We can't be those people. Oh, I don't want to be that person. A no-buy is the perfect way to start honing and flexing that skill, and you can do other things on your no-buy to really make that something that's part of your no-buy journey. I mean, I've talked at the top of the video that no-buys don't have to be all about debt and shopping addiction. It could be, how do I become a mentally strong person? How do I become a gritty person? And you could do other things in your life to call that to you, to practice it, to really reinforce it by the time that you're done. I think that's a pretty compelling reason on its own. But I've saved what could potentially be the most compelling for last. No-buys can change your life. I don't say this lightly because in the history of my channel, I've said this, about 3 times. And the main reason for that is no-buys are the opportunity to change our habits, and we can change our lives through changing our habits. It is possible to go through a no-buy with minimal habit change if we're not being conscious of this desire to change habits or what habits you might want to change. You can go through a no-buy without changing habits or having minimal habit change. And I think that depends on what you're focusing on and also the attitude that you bring to the no-buy. I do just want to say that I think that making mistakes are actually an important part of learning and likely something that will happen for most people on a no-buy. Like at some point, you'll make a mistake. And I just think they're so central to our educational experiences, and there's so much in our lives that have told us that mistakes are bad and they need to be avoided at all costs, but they're often the opportunities or the times that we learn the most. It's in our mistakes that are most precious, that are pertinent life lessons, or learning happens. And it's in our mistakes that we can learn about our habits as well. For me, my two biggest habit changes have been emotional spending and contentment. These two things have fundamentally changed my life. Have you ever heard of the quote that goes something like, never give up on your goals because of the time it will take to accomplish them? The time will pass anyways. Guys, the time will pass. A year is going to go by whether you're on a no-buy or not. It's not as though if you decide not to do a no-buy year that you'll somehow not experience the year. 2023 will hopefully happen and be completed by most of us. Just because you're not on a no-buy year doesn't mean that you don't experience 2023. How many times have you said, I'll do this thing, or I want to change this habit, and then you haven't followed through? Imagine where you could be next year with your goals if you decided to follow through, if you decided to go on a no-buy, whether that is something like paying down debt, or whether that is something like becoming a grittier or more mentally strong person, or whether that's somebody who wants to use up what you have or save money to buy a house, put on a down payment on something, maybe buy new furniture, go on a vacation, move out of your house, downsize, upsize. Like, imagine where you would be with those goals if you decided to go on a no-buy year next year. I get that a year can feel like a long time. I really do. And it took me quite a while, honestly, to be okay with spending a year doing that thing. But honestly, as somebody who is a chronic think too mucher, a chronic overthinker, this is something where you just maybe need to think about it a little less. Like, you just need to decide to go on the no-buy and then just do it. Because the longer I thought about how long the year is going to be, how long 365 days is going to feel like, how long that's going to be, and how little I'm going to shop and what that's going to feel like, the more I thought about it, the more I didn't want to do it, the more extreme that it felt, the more difficult it felt, the more I was able to second guess myself, and the more that I was able to say I can't do it and put up roadblocks and find compelling reasons to stop. There will always be reasons to not do something, always. But there will also always be reasons to do something. And are you going to let your fear of failure, are you going to let your own ideas of what too long feels like, or giving up on yourself, are you going to let all those ideas in your head win? Because the year will pass. Where do you want to be next year? Where do you want to be? Do you want to be having the same behavior? Do you want to be stuck in the same situation? Do you want to be stuck in the same cycles that leave you unhappy? Or do you want to change your life? Do you want to change your habits? Do you want to be different and act different? Because this is your opportunity, guys. And I'm not always a fan of, new year, new me type of mentality, but also if there's something that you actually want to change, playing into motivation and when it's its highest is something I can get on board with anytime. Like, you're playing to your strengths, like you're playing to, you're using it to your advantage. So that's it from me. Did I convince you to go on a no-buy? Let me know in the comments if I have convinced you. Yes, no. If you're on the fence, cool to hear about that too. I mean, if it's a no, I'm cool to hear about it too. And please go vote in the community tab as to whether I've convinced you or not. And maybe if I haven't convinced you, I don't know, maybe we could do a round 2. Maybe. Anyways, I had a lot of fun in this video, and I hope you did too. I hope you'll stick around for the rest of Vlogmas, and I would love to see you again back here for another video. Thank you so much for watching, and bye.